So there we have it. The deal is done. There will be another driver next to Max Verstappen that isn't Checo. And it's Liam Lawson. Huh. Okay. I will do my best to put my personal preferences aside for this video right after this. With that out of the way, we can now discuss the news with a little less passionate of a slant. Barely 12 hours after the news of Sergio Perez departing Red Bull, as if the contract extension he got during the summer never happened and we went back to the 2024 one, the team have announced his replacement in the form of Liam Lawson and not Yuki Tsunoda after many months of speculation regarding this news. So indeed, Yuki Tsunoda will be spending 2025 at Racing Bulls leading the team alongside Isaac Hadjar. So now the mystery as to who is going where is now pretty much done, because Isaac Hadjar basically spilled the beans in a press conference at Qatar, and also Campos Racing, his F2 team, has no seat for him anymore because there'll be Arvid Lindblad there, and they're keeping Pepe Mate for 2025. And I reckon that if Arvid Lindblad has a blinder of a season in 2025, he'll be going alongside Hadjar for 2026. Because after the Honda deal is done, Tsunoda's out. But it does mean that the progression of Red Bull Juniors, it's been arguably restored after years of discord with Daniel Ricciardo's sudden departure, Carlos Sainz leaving, Checo's hiring after Alex Albon's demotion as a reserve for 2021. Now that in itself is a good thing for Red Bull to fix in the midst of an upcoming season, which isn't particularly showing as much promise as in previous years. Let's be real, if Red Bull were going to be doing something like this would be a good year to do it, where Red Bull, they're not at the top of the table anymore, they're now third place, which they have historically been for many years, meaning they can take a little bit of a gamble when it comes to their lineup. Raise up their juniors again. In the case of Liam Lawson, he has had maybe about 11 Grand Prix or so to test his might against some of the world's most experienced racing drivers. Pretty much the similar situation which Alex Albon had when he got the call-up from Toro Rosso after they dropped Pierre Gasly back down. Because let's remember, Alex Albon only had about 11 or 12 races under his belt, and he got the call-up. He was actually a steady pair of hands in 2019. They did really well with him. And it's just a shame that it didn't work out after 2020, but, Checo was available and he had fame, experience, money, reputation. That was a tough act for Albon to try and emulate. But there's also the situation regarding the technical team and voicing their concerns about the RB21 and its potential amongst its competitors, and the balancing act of 2026's development and what is expected to be the closest championship battle in recent memory for 2025. So even though the spotlight won't be quite as fixed on the second Red Bull driver anymore, because that argument has now been done, but arguably this tricky situation that the team has found themselves in has been down to the antics and shenanigans of Sergio Perez and what's been going on, with the team basically ignoring his feedback since Spain 2023, and that leading in turn to a just complete lackadaisical situation that season because Max was doing so well. Then it came back to bite them with the RB20, and then Checo simply couldn't handle the car. He crashed the car. He didn't score as many points. They've lost prize money. They've lost important development time in just having to repair the car with all the damages sustained. There have been a lot of situations that could have easily been avoided had they maintained their ruthless streak and stuck to what they were planning to do after Spa, especially with a car where they needed the second driver to step up. It wasn't 2023 anymore, and it seriously makes his "I'm not leaving" tweet age terribly. In fact, I think it got community noted, so Checo, you better delete that tweet, seriously. It's not going to look good. And another reason why Checo isn't fully to blame here is simply down for the 1+1 deal that Horner gave him in the middle of the summer amongst all of the struggling. It just felt really bizarre. And I would easily say that's probably one of the biggest gaffes in Horner's career, but does he really care? No? He got a CBE. He got an honours from the king just now. It's like, what does he care? But it did lead to talk surrounding other things than driving when it concerned the driver, which is always a bad thing. Now the team can be accused of mishandling 2 long-term F1 races with big reputations and popularity in the space of 1 year. Both of these drivers were treated with clumsiness by their management in relation to their star power, influence, and the team's outlook on the future. By rushing these 2 veterans out the door so haphazardly, all it's done is completely tarnish the team's reputation amongst the wider world of Formula 1, who look to these drivers with great regard. Not to mention overlooking another young promising driver who has a huge fan base amongst the younger Formula 1 fans especially. All it's going to do is spark up questions about why did Yuki Tsunoda get overlooked that do not look into the real minutiae and details about deals and future deals and currently what's going on behind the scenes. There are going to be cards played left, right and centre, which sort of makes the situation look all the more simplistic and probably a little bit naive. And hey, I'm disappointed that Yuki Tsunoda didn't get this opportunity, and I am mad. I am frustrated because he has done the time. Surely his experience would be enough for him to keep a level head next to Max Verstappen, but no, apparently not. Maybe that level head was needed to help steer the ship at Racing Bulls, like the same justification was for Pierre Gasly to never get a second chance at Red Bull Racing. But I can easily see that the sentiment amongst F1 journalists about Liam Lawson's appointment over the Yuki Tsunoda is that of surprise. It's not complete delight or going, yes, that was a really good solid choice. It's like oh, so they're actually doing it. So yeah, it's not just surprise, it's concern. We will touch more on that in a moment, but what's going on with Sergio? Is he retiring? Is he moving to VCarb? Well, no. According to GP Blog, Horner does have a plan for Perez. So instead of him leaving F1 altogether, he'll be taking a sabbatical and spending 2025 with his young family, refocusing his efforts for the future, whilst also still being a brand ambassador for the team and promoting Red Bull in certain territories. And for many long-term Formula One fans, when you hear about a driver taking a sabbatical, you look to Mika Hakkinen, because he never technically retired from Formula One, although, come on, he has retired from Formula One. Or maybe, I'm going to have to whip out the phone for this one, maybe this could be a blessing in disguise for Checo should he want to remain in Formula One. Maybe this could be the right opportunity for him to conduct discussions with a certain new team coming into the sport relatively soon, Cadillac. Maybe outside of the spotlight of Formula One, he's away from the paddocks. That means everyone's not got their beady eye on him watching exactly what he's doing. They can all be done under the radar to maybe secure him a couple more years in Formula One where he's not at Red Bull. He can lead the team with experience because Cadillac have said they do want a really experienced pair of hands partnering up with probably Colton Herta after his really good return to form in 2024. So maybe this could be the guy, Perez, the financial backing perhaps. It does provide Red Bull a little bit of a way in back for Checo perhaps, or just a nice way to wean themselves off all of the success and sponsorship money and attention that the Mexican has given the team. But the most likely scenario is that Sergio will be kept on the company's payroll as their exhibition driver for events in certain regions. They're trying to offer him an open-ended conclusion, them saying that this was Checo's choice and he chose to undertake this path. But I doubt that in the extreme. But you've only got to look at the reality. After 2023, where Checo's confidence took a nosedive and he was being pounded left, right and centre by the media, his own team, Helmut Marko, it was absolutely ridiculous. He then did seek help, and this year he's been an absolute driving force for self-belief. That tweet, again, provided him that confidence. He was able to just keep his head held high and he would just ride through it all, rise above it. And that is really, really admirable and valiant. But the results were not matching the uptick in performance. Azerbaijan, had that actually been a podium, maybe that might have been enough to maybe see him through, because maybe that might have been a way for him to rebound, gain that mojo back, and therefore end the season with at least Red Bull second in the Constructors. Being the runners-up doesn't sound as bad as being third, so that is something to consider here. But the writing was on the wall. Red Bull was not providing him a car, nor could Checo try and work around that car and come up with something anyway. And also, you know what they say about resting on laurels and the like? I do feel like Red Bull was sitting pretty and they didn't really care about Checo because Max was doing so well. Then when it did matter, it was too little too late. And wow, it feels really weird to say. After all these months of making content, everyone talking about Perez being done, he is actually done. I think a lot of people are going to be lost right now. What are they going to be talking about? Well, there is going to be plenty to talk about, let's be real, because 2025, Liam Lawson, what's going to happen to him? I personally find it a crying shame that Checo's career has fizzled out so dramatically, but his story is a huge indicator of how being Max Verstappen's teammate is a poison chalice. One that doesn't seem quite as enticing either as it was just a couple of years ago. And I think it's quite obvious that throughout all of this, even though the Perez camp has been saying that they've got the upper hand, they have a contract, and that Perez's dad was saying that he was ready to release a list of liars who were saying that his son was out of Formula One. No, it seems like Red Bull certainly had the upper hand in negotiations, because even though Checo had a contract, that 1+1 deal under his belt, it still wasn't enough for him to retain the seat for at least 2025. We didn't get a stalemate situation, like I probably speculated last week, where we might have seen in Melbourne, Checo turns up in his racing overalls, expecting to drive the car, then he doesn't drive the car, and then Red Bull only has one vehicle for the entire race, and this is the beginning of a 2025 season, the most intense probably in recent memory. So that wouldn't have been a great start for that team, and then Liam Lawson would have been completely complicated. That would have been made awkward for his debut with the top team. It would have been an absolute mess, but no, Red Bull had managed to avert that. They got Checo out of the seat, free to put Lawson into it, and maybe they'd given him the hope, Perez, that he could return to F1 in 2026 or something. But not with Racing Bulls, though. Horner has said that that was never considered when talks were going on between the two. So perhaps it was best for Horner to kick the can down the road while also raking in some sort of financial benefit from keeping Perez around in some capacity. You might see a couple of sponsors still on the car for 2025. You might see Perez knocking around as a reserve driver, perhaps. Who knows? But when it comes to the matter of Liam Lawson himself, the team are very much in the belief that in the 11 Grand Prix that he has entered, the Kiwi racer is ready for a shot alongside the Dutchman. And like I touched upon earlier, that is a similar amount accrued by Alex Albon when he got the call-up. Because the main argument that Horner has had saying why Lawson is ready to take on Max Verstappen is that race pace-wise, he has got what it takes, and that it was enough to be able to get him past Yuki Tsunoda and into the seat with Verstappen. All of the situations were saying that, hey, maybe Lawson requires a few more races, maybe an entire season campaign, before he then gets the call-up to Max Verstappen's side in 2026 when the rules change. I personally believe that that was the most logical scenario. Give him an entire year to cut his teeth and then just go with the top team. And if Max Verstappen does retire, then Lawson can take up the role as team leader. It seemed quite smooth, but no, they're pushing it further forward. And that is a really, really high-risk gamble, but maybe Red Bull feels like, hey, maybe we should just live up to our own reputation of being have-a-go heroes and take a high risk around now because we already had a bad season, as Horner might say, and, you know, let's just make it even harder for ourselves, and if it does pay off, then it's even bigger, and Liam Lawson's one of our own, and there you go, it's absolutely fantastic. The Red Bull Junior team, we are so back, baby. So when it comes to Liam Lawson and what Horner has to say about this promotion, here's what he's had to say. I am delighted to announce that Liam Lawson will join the team in 2025. Liam's performance over the course of his 2 stints was blah, blah, blah. You don't want to hear about that, do you? You want to know exactly why they chose Liam over Yuki. But don't worry, I'll dust this off right here. Here's what he had to say regarding the situation. I won't do the voice, so here, this is the truth. It was very, very tight between the two of them. I mean, Yuki is a very fast driver. He's got 3 or 4 seasons of experience now. He did a very good job in the tyre test for us in Abu Dhabi, where the engineers were impressed with how he performed. But we just felt with Liam, when you look and go into the analytics of his race, pace was slightly better in the races that he did. His qualifying pace was very tight with Yuki, and you've got to assume that the potential with Liam, having only done 11 Grand Prix, is he's only going to get better and stronger. He's shown real mental resilience and toughness. The engineers have enjoyed working with him through the running that he's done this year. He's got a good work ethic as well, so it is great to have Yuki still involved with the Racing Bull scene next year. And of course, he's on standby should he ever be required. So, interesting. It's not like they're completely writing off Yuki. I don't think we should really hold much hope about it. Don't hold your breath. It's just something they might be saying to placate the many Tsunoda fans, because the hashtag Yuki to Red Bull movement, that made news in Japan. There had to be some sort of bone thrown out there. But what is interesting, that further along that article from ESPN, Horner then goes on to mention that the team have learnt from the mistakes of Perez's tenure and how the pressure could increase on the other side of the garage, that they would ensure that Liam could block out all the noise from car 1 and instead focus on his own professional development in relative isolation and relaxation. I'm not so sure about that, because comments from Zach Brown not that long ago would have rubbed salt into the wound for Christian Horner. Even though they seemed buddy-buddy on good terms, deep down, I bet Horner is seething that they lost the Constructors' Championship in such a manner. It wasn't lost due to a close call or a tight battle. No, it was down to simply the second driver not pulling their weight in comparison to the first one, who went on to win the world title. When Zach Brown goes on to say that they have Perez to thank for them winning their first Constructors' Championship in 26 years, that is going to sting. That is going to sting terribly, that you effectively have scored multiple own goals, so that means your nearest rivals get all the glory. That's really, really bad. Red Bull probably won't want the same scenario happening again, where the second driver is simply not doing enough. I mean, I doubt they would expect Lawson to be right on top of Verstappen, but surely within like 125, 150, that would be enough, so that means Verstappen doesn't have to do everything for Red Bull to get the Constructors' title. But at the same time, you just feel like, are they really going to have the patience for Liam? That is all of this exposure and pressure, the first high-profile New Zealand driver in decades? This is going to be a lot for Lawson to take, and if he can handle it and hold his own, then great. I feel like he has been practicing and preparing himself for all of the exposure and attention with his YouTube channel, Drive to Survive. He's certainly been trying to get himself up to speed in that regard in terms of being aware within the public eye and in Formula One circles. That's really, really good and commendable. But this is a situation where Red Bull are on the back foot. They are a wounded predator. They are an animal desperate to get revenge from those closest to them. And I just feel like Lawson is going straight into it. And maybe people might be saying that Tsunoda got a blessing in disguise. He dodged the bullet. If he failed against Verstappen, that would have been the end of his career, and you could have forgotten any hope of getting back with Aston Martin or Honda or something like that, but I'll touch upon that in a moment. But I guess with Lawson, they seem to want to take a punt with him. But maybe they kind of had no choice, because we got to remember that in the original contract that Marco stated with Lawson, that they had to use him for 2025, or else they would have lost him entirely. And after Abu Dhabi 2024, he had no contract with Racing Bull, so they would have in theory lost him. So they had no choice but to use him in some capacity with some team. And then there's Hajar there. They would have wanted to fix the situation. Then Perez was underperforming. It was all clear as day. That was the pathway to keep Lawson after all of the investment and millions of dollars they spent on him. The Lawson camp had Red Bull over a barrel. Of course they were going to put him in there. So going back to what Horner said regarding Yuki being ready to step in should the need arise, is he actually going to be getting a mid-season driver swap? No, I don't see that happening, because you got to remember, the reason why Tsunoda, I think, was overlooked, as is said by the likes of Coffee Corner Motorsport in a very, very good piece, it may be down to simply political reasons, in terms of businesses, rather than, where a driver comes from. As much as I was championing the idea that Tsunoda should get a single-year contract to prove himself against Verstappen at Red Bull Racing, the odds of that happening were very, very small. The Abu Dhabi test he conducted last week, Honda practically begged Red Bull to make that happen, to at least hear them out about the potential for Tsunoda to get them and the team back to the top spot in their final year together, before Honda went off to Aston Martin. I mean, that would have been a fair argument, and that would have been a way to press Horner's button. Them saying, hey, well, you know what Tsunoda can do. We believe in him. We believed in him for years, and you want to get back on the constructor stop. We believe Yuki's your guy alongside Max to be able to do that. It's our final year together, Christian, baby. Come on. We want to end this on a good note, right? But could you imagine how wholesome it would have been for Tsunoda to be in the white Red Bull for maybe his final race with them, before he moves on to maybe Aston Martin, hopefully? But maybe Honda know that them getting Tsunoda into a race seat at Aston Martin will be an uphill battle, because as we know all too well, Stroll is practically locked in for forever, and Alonso probably will continue for a few more years should the car improve, so their hopes for Yuki getting a race seat with them, as they've been able to do for decades with their contracts as suppliers of engines to teams, it's very, very unlikely. Whereas Liam, he's a Red Bull driver through and through, with no ties to outside suppliers, and as Coffee Corner Motorsport pointed out quite rightly, Ford do not want a Honda-backed driver potentially doing well with Red Bull Racing and making contracts a little bit more awkward when Ford comes online fully with Red Bull post-2026. So yeah, I've got to really give my hats off to Terry there. It was a really, really good point. I didn't think that thoroughly. And also, they have enough evidence to be able to throw out to the masses, instead of talking about, Ford, Honda, all that stuff. They probably don't want to talk about that drama. They can just say, well, look, Liam was close enough to Yuki, and Liam's only participated in 1/10 of the amount, practically, of what races Yuki has been. So that potential, the upward swing, is greater than Yuki, who has now got 100 Grand Prix. He's experienced, but the peak of his potential is probably not quite as high. The mystery, the uncertainty, you would think that would be like, well, we don't really know how Liam will do, but apparently in Formula One, that actually seems to be appealing. The upward trajectory, potential, that's a very interesting watchword in Formula One, isn't it? But the reality is, them choosing Lawson is to keep Ford sweet and happy, because they're going to be entering a brand new partnership after 2026. They'll want to have Red Bull Ford drivers riding through the ranks and propelling the team to success in the top formula. Tsunoda is not part of that model. So you might be thinking, well, okay, that's not so bad. It is true. Tsunoda wasn't a Red Bull junior driver through and through, and, we all been complaining about Red Bull not taking their junior drivers seriously. So if this is the genuine reason that they want to get back to that model and promoting their own junior talent and making it actually hopeful for their junior talent to be able to get a chance in Formula One, then surely that's for the best, really. That maybe with Ricciardo being dropped, Perez being dropped, Tsunoda being overlooked, maybe this might be a way of restoring the balance that we saw back in the 2010s. Well, maybe. But I still feel like Tsunoda deserved a chance, one more year, just one season with them to be able to prove himself. But yeah, it's true. The political situation is really, really big. It's significant. Honda are leaving, Ford are coming in for the long term. Honda, Red Bull, no, it was done. I thought that was the case earlier on in the year, but then the hype, I just let myself get swung by it. And yeah, I don't like being cynical, I really don't. Honda played fast and loose in 2021, saying they were leaving, then they weren't leaving, and then their commitment with Red Bull was really ambiguous. That's why Red Bull Powertrains exists, because Red Bull didn't want to go through that chicanery anymore. They wanted to be in charge of their own destiny and be a manufacturer and not have to worry about an engine supplier going, yeah, even though we're doing really well, we don't want to be in F1 anymore. Yeah, bye. Oh, no, wait. Oh, you're doing well. Oh, no, never mind. And even though this is a huge opportunity for Lawson, I'm really sure that internally he is bricking it. Yes, in terms of the character of a Red Bull driver, he has got it. He has proven this season he's not afraid to chuck his car into places that would raise eyebrows, and that he would race anyone the same, regardless of their standing in the sport or the number of championships they have. Note his beef with Alonso. Horner likes that mentality, the have-a-go hero. But who's to say that Yuki wouldn't have had the same quality? And you can't use the argument saying, well, Yuki's got a really bad temper. No, he does not. He is a changed man. He is not the same guy he was in 2022, when arguably you could say Yuki's temper would be the undoing of his Formula One career. But he's changed since then. Tsunoda is much more calm. He is much more complete. And any team that gets him will do well. And I really hope that Aston Martin can actually look at 2025. And if Stroll does not perform or progress or revel with Adrian Newey there, they've got to do something. Honda really needs to turn the screw. Maybe they might come up with a halfway house situation where Tsunoda becomes their reserve for 2026. And then in 2027, after 1 year together, when Aston Martin and Honda have this car designed by Adrian Newey, powered by Honda, who have won championships recently, if Stroll still cannot hack it then, they might have no choice but to put Tsunoda in with Alonso. Who knows? Or alternatively, maybe Papa Stroll might just pay Alonso off to retire and then it'd be Tsunoda and Stroll. So, money. But maybe Tsunoda's calm head might have been the justification to keep him at Racing Bulls. They had their own objectives to meet with the shareholders, and having Tsunoda there as the leader would be valuable, because he's been able to carry that team for the last couple of years when times have been tough, especially since he's well liked there and knows the operation inside and out. And Hadjar will be there for next year, and to not have an experienced driver if they promoted Tsunoda and it would have been Lawson and Hadjar, that would have really made their aim to getting fifth in the constructors that much harder. It would have been very, very difficult. I agree. It's unfair that Yuki did not get a chance to really test himself against Max Verstappen. He's not going to get that chance anymore in the same car. But 2025, as we can tell already when we're months out, it's going to be a very, very, very long year. Anything can happen. Lawson could be demoted. He could be removed from the Red Bull operation altogether. Tsunoda might get his opportunity after all, saying that it's only going to be for 2025. He might leave and then Aston Martin, Honda, who knows? We might even see a situation where, since Perez is still on the Red Bull company payroll, he might be brought in to substitute for Liam Lawson. If he gets demoted and then Hadjar gets bumped out, or maybe Lawson is out altogether, Perez might come back with Verstappen for the remainder of 2025 after the summer break. I know that's completely bizarre and surreal and weird after what's been going on, them terminating the 2024 deal, but this could easily happen. Formula One is so unpredictable. So I'm keeping that in my back pocket, the idea of a Perez return with Red Bull. I'm not easily going to whip it out, but it's going to be there, let's just say that. Because maybe if that's the case, and then Perez does call it quits for Formula One, he could at least get a proper send-off for the team, instead of, being remembered that his last great deed for the team was to basically buy them 2,000 bottles of tequila. And of course, yeah, I wish Liam all the best with this opportunity, because not every driver gets this, so I wish him well. but I just hope that this opportunity is something that sees him flourish in Formula 1, instead of seeing him struggle against Max and either be cast out of the sport or demoted to racing bulls for all eternity. Which is a similar situation Daniel Ricciardo found himself in, predictions touting him to do well in 2024 coming up short. Much like how my prediction with Daniel really fizzled out this season, you can watch that and many more of my predictions and how awful they were or not in this video here you can watch right now.